Eleanor Grayson was a woman who lived her life quietly, almost like the calm waves that lapped against the shore of her small coastal town. She wasn't someone you'd notice in a crowd, but if you took the time to know her, she had a way of making people feel seen and heard. Her days were filled with simple joys: gardening, reading books borrowed from the local library where she volunteered, and spending hours playing with her grandchildren. To everyone around her, Eleanor seemed like an ordinary woman leading an ordinary life. But sometimes it's the quiet ones who carry the deepest secrets. The coastal town where Eleanor lived was picturesque, with its sandy beaches, narrow streets, lined with colorful cottages and the salty breeze that carried whispers of stories untold. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and strangers stood out like sore thumbs. For as long as anyone could remember, Eleanor had been a part of this tight-knit community. She attended church every Sunday, baked pies for the annual summer festival, and always had a warm smile ready for those who crossed her path. Her family adored her. Sarah, her eldest daughter, often joked that Eleanor was the glue holding them all together. Michael, her son, admired how strong and resilient she was, especially after losing her husband, a man everyone called the kindest soul, years ago. And then there was Emily, her youngest, who loved nothing more than curling up on the couch with her mother while Eleanor told stories about growing flowers or cooking meals from scratch. To them, Eleanor wasn't just their mom or grandmother. She was their anchor, their safe harbor. But despite her warmth and openness when it came to everyday matters, Eleanor rarely spoke about her own past. If asked, she'd simply brush off questions with a soft laugh and say something vague like, "Oh, those days are behind me now." Her children never pressed too hard because they assumed she was just being modest. After all, what extraordinary tales could come from someone who spent most of her adult life tending to a garden and helping neighbors? Still, there were moments when Eleanor's eyes would glaze over, as though she were lost in thought. Sometimes late at night, Sarah would catch her sitting by the window staring out at the dark ocean. On those occasions, Eleanor looked almost haunted. But whenever Sarah asked if everything was okay, Eleanor would snap back to reality, smile sweetly, and assure her daughter that she was fine. "Just thinking about old times," she'd say before heading off to bed. No one suspected that beneath her gentle exterior lay a life far richer and stranger than anyone imagined. Eleanor's hands, which now carefully pruned roses and turned pages in worn-out novels, had once done things no one in the family could have dreamed of. The same fingers that wiped tears from her grandchildren's cheeks had touched machinery and tools meant for purposes unknown. Yet these memories stayed locked away, buried deep within her heart, hidden even from those she loved most. As the years passed, Eleanor grew older, and like many people her age, she began experiencing health issues. At first, they were minor: a douse, persistent cough here, some fatigue there. But soon the symptoms worsened. Doctors struggled to pinpoint the cause, running test after test without finding anything conclusive. "It might be stress," one doctor suggested gently, though Eleanor insisted she wasn't worried about anything. "Or maybe it's just her body slowing down," another offered, chalking it up to natural aging. Despite their confusion, Eleanor remained optimistic. She continued going about her daily routine, refusing to let whatever ailment she had dampen her spirits. Her family admired her resilience, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. Sarah, in particular, noticed how pale her mother had become, and how much weight she'd lost recently. Still, Eleanor brushed off their concerns, saying she felt fine and didn't want anyone fussing over her. One chilly morning, however, everything changed. Eleanor woke up feeling weaker than usual, her breaths shallow and labored. Concerned, Sarah rushed her to the hospital, where doctors immediately hooked her up to machines and began running tests again. Hours turned into days, and still, no clear diagnosis emerged. Then one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across the sky, Eleanor slipped away peacefully, leaving her family heartbroken. Her death left a void that couldn't easily be filled. The house felt emptier without her humming in the kitchen or pottering around the garden. Her grandchildren cried endlessly, unable to comprehend why Grandma wasn't coming back. Even the neighbors, who had grown accustomed to seeing her cheerful face at the library or waving hello from her porch, felt the loss keenly. Life in the little coastal town suddenly seemed duller, quieter, as though Eleanor's presence had been the spark that kept it alive. In the days following her passing, Sarah, Michael, and Emily tried to piece together what had happened. They wanted answers, not just about her illness, but about the mysterious episodes of introspection she'd had during her final years. Why had she seemed so distant at times? What thoughts had occupied her mind when she sat by the window, staring out at the sea? These questions swirled in their heads, unanswered and unsettling. Little did they know, the truth was far greater than any of them could have imagined. Eleanor's quiet life had been a facade, a carefully constructed shield hiding a past shrouded in secrecy. And while she may have taken those secrets to her grave, fate had other plans. The answers lay not in memories or photographs, but somewhere closer to home, in her very body. After Eleanor's passing, her family was left with more questions than answers. Her sudden death had been unexpected, and the lack of a clear diagnosis only added to their confusion and grief. Sarah, Michael, and Emily decided that they needed to understand what had happened to their mother. They hoped an autopsy might provide some clarity, not just for closure, but also to ensure that whatever had taken her wouldn't affect anyone else in the family. It was a painful decision, but they agreed it was necessary. The hospital staff handled the procedure with care, as they always did. At first, everything seemed routine. The doctors began by examining Eleanor's internal organs, looking for signs of disease or abnormalities that might explain her rapid decline. Her heart, lungs, liver, all appeared normal at first glance. There were no tumors, no infections, nothing that stood out as unusual. The medical team exchanged puzzled looks, wondering if perhaps the cause of death would remain a mystery. But then, something strange caught the attention of one of the examiners. Deep within Eleanor's abdomen, nestled near her lower intestines, was an object that didn't belong there. At first glance, it looked like a small lump of scar tissue, the kind that sometimes forms after surgery or injury. But upon closer inspection, the doctor realized it wasn't natural at all. It was smooth, metallic, and shaped like a tiny capsule. The surface was dull and tarnished, suggesting it had been inside her body for decades. The discovery sent shockwaves through the room. None of the doctors could recall ever seeing anything like this before. How had such an object ended up inside Eleanor's body? Who had put it there? And why? Questions raced through their minds as they carefully documented the find. The capsule was firmly embedded in the surrounding tissue, almost as if it had become part of her over time. Removing it required precision and patience, but eventually, the doctors managed to extract it without causing further damage. When the capsule was finally free, it was placed on a sterile tray for examination. It was about the size of a large pill, cylindrical in shape, with faint etchings along its surface. The markings were intricate but worn down by time, making them difficult to decipher. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like a harmless piece of metal, but the doctors knew better. This was no ordinary object. It had clearly been designed and implanted intentionally. Word of the discovery quickly reached Eleanor's family. When Sarah, Michael, and Emily were informed, they were stunned. "What do you mean there was something inside her?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "How is that even possible?" The doctor explained as gently as he could, showing them photographs of the capsule and describing how it had been found. He assured them that it likely hadn't caused her death directly, but admitted they still didn't know why she had fallen so suddenly. The news left the family reeling. They couldn't fathom how their mother, who had lived such a quiet and unassuming life, could have carried something so bizarre inside her for so long. Was it some kind of medical device from years ago? Had she undergone a procedure they didn't know about? Or was it something else entirely? Something darker, more mysterious? Determined to get answers, the family requested that the capsule be analyzed further. Specialists were brought in to examine it, using advanced tools to study its composition and structure. What they found only deepened the mystery. The material wasn't typical of any known medical implants from Eleanor's era. In fact, it seemed far ahead of its time, almost futuristic in design. The etchings on the surface weren't random either. They appeared to be symbols or codes, though their meaning remained elusive. As the investigation continued, the family began piecing together fragments of Eleanor's past. They scoured old photo albums, letters, and documents, searching for any clue that might shed light on the strange discovery. One of the first things they noticed was how little information existed about her early adulthood. Most of the photos showed her as a young woman smiling brightly, but details about where she had worked or what she had done during those years were scarce. It was as if someone, or perhaps Eleanor herself, had deliberately erased parts of her history. Emily remembered asking her mother once about her job before she retired. Eleanor had laughed softly and said, "Oh, I did a bit of this and that, nothing exciting really." At the time, Emily hadn't thought much of it. Now, however, those words took on a new significance. Could Eleanor have been involved in something extraordinary during those missing years? Something important enough to leave traces, not just in memories but in her very body? Sarah, who had always been the most curious of the siblings, decided to dig deeper. She called old friends and acquaintances of her parents, hoping someone might remember something unusual about Eleanor's past. One neighbor mentioned hearing rumors about Eleanor traveling abroad in her 20s, though no one could confirm where she had gone or why. Another recalled seeing her come home late at night during those years, carrying bags that looked heavy and important. These snippets of information were vague, but they hinted at a life far different from the one Eleanor had led in recent decades. Meanwhile, the specialists working on the capsule made another startling discovery. Inside the tiny container was a rolled-up piece of microfilm, tightly wound and protected by a thin layer of resin. Microfilm was a technology used primarily in the mid-20th century for storing large amounts of data in compact form. Whoever had placed it inside Eleanor must have intended it to last for decades, safeguarded against decay and detection. The presence of the microfilm raised even more questions. What kind of information could be stored on it? And why had it been hidden inside Eleanor's body? The family debated whether to open it immediately or wait until they understood more about its origins. Ultimately, they decided to proceed cautiously, enlisting experts in cryptography and archival research to help them unlock its secrets. As the process unfolded, Sarah, Michael, and Emily struggled to reconcile the image of their mother with the growing evidence of her mysterious past. The woman who had spent her later years tending to flowers and baking pies now seemed like a stranger. How had she managed to keep such a monumental secret for so long? And what had driven her to carry it with her, to literally embed it within herself, for all these years? The emotional toll of the discovery weighed heavily on the family. Each revelation brought them closer to understanding their mother's hidden life, but it also highlighted how little they truly knew about her. They felt a mix of awe, sadness, and frustration. Awe at the realization that Eleanor had been part of something extraordinary, sadness that she had never shared it with them, and frustration at the unanswered questions that lingered like shadows around her memory. Despite the turmoil, the family clung to each other for support. They talked late into the nights, sharing memories of Eleanor and speculating about the life she had kept hidden. Slowly, they began to see her in a new light, not just as the loving mother and grandmother they had always known, but as a woman of incredible strength and resolve. Whatever secrets she had carried, whatever burdens she had borne, she had done so silently, protecting those she loved even as she sacrificed pieces of herself. And yet the mystery of the capsule remained unsolved. Its contents were still locked away, waiting to be unraveled. For now, the family could only wonder, what story would it tell? And how would it change their understanding of Eleanor and themselves forever? As the days turned into weeks, Sarah, Michael, and Emily found themselves consumed by the mystery surrounding their mother's past. The metallic capsule and its cryptic contents had become an obsession for the family. a puzzle they couldn't let go of. Every new discovery only deepened the intrigue, pulling them further into a world that felt both foreign and eerily close to home. They knew they were on the verge of uncovering something monumental, but the weight of not knowing was almost unbearable. The microfilm inside the capsule proved to be more complicated than anyone had anticipated. It wasn't just a simple roll of images or text. It was encoded, layered with security measures designed to keep its secrets safe. Specialists worked tirelessly to decode it, using advanced software and techniques borrowed from fields as diverse as cryptography and archaeology. Slowly, fragments began to emerge. Diagrams, numbers, symbols, and what appeared to be blueprints for devices no one could immediately identify. Each piece of information seemed to hint at a larger narrative, one that spanned decades and touched on technologies far beyond anything the family understood. While the experts focused on cracking the code, Sarah took it upon herself to dig deeper into Eleanor's personal history. She started by revisiting old letters and photographs, searching for any detail she might have missed before. One evening, while rummaging through a dusty box in the attic, she stumbled upon a faded envelope tucked beneath a stack of old receipts. Inside was a collection of documents written in careful, precise handwriting, Eleanor's handwriting. Among them were travel itineraries, hotel reservations, and even a passport stamped with unfamiliar locations. The passports caught Sarah's attention immediately. There were stamps from countries Eleanor had never mentioned visiting: Switzerland, Japan, Argentina, and others. Some of the dates corresponded to periods when Sarah and her siblings were young children, yet none of them remembered their mother traveling during those times. In fact, Eleanor had always claimed she preferred staying close to home, content to watch over her family rather than explore distant lands. Clearly, that hadn't been entirely true. Curious, Sarah decided to investigate further. She reached out to some of Eleanor's oldest friends, hoping someone might recall hearing about her travels. Most people were surprised by the question, insisting they had no idea Eleanor had ever left the country. But one name kept coming up repeatedly: a man named Dr. Harold Langston. According to several acquaintances, Eleanor and Harold had been close colleagues, or perhaps more, at some point in the past. No one could say exactly what their relationship entailed, but there were whispers of late-night phone calls and hushed conversations between the two. Intrigued, Sarah tracked down Dr. Langston's whereabouts. To her surprise, he was still alive, living in a retirement community not far from the coastal town where Eleanor had spent her final years. With Michael and Emily's encouragement, Sarah arranged a meeting, unsure of what to expect. When she arrived at his modest apartment, she found an elderly man sitting by the window, gazing out at the garden below. His hair was silver, his hands gnarled with age, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Dr. Langston?" Sarah asked hesitantly, introducing herself as Eleanor Grayson's daughter. At the mention of Eleanor's name, the man stiffened slightly, his expression shifting from curiosity to something harder to read. After a moment, he gestured for Sarah to sit, offering her a cup of tea before launching into a story that would change everything she thought she knew about her mother. Harold explained that he and Eleanor had worked together many years ago on a classified project funded by the government. The details were murky, intentionally so, but he described it as an initiative aimed at advancing medical technology and energy solutions. Eleanor, he said, had been one of the brightest minds on the team, a brilliant engineer whose ideas pushed boundaries others didn't even know existed. Together, they had developed prototypes for machines capable of revolutionizing healthcare and sustainability, though none of these inventions had ever seen the light of day. "We were told our work would change the world," Harold said, his voice tinged with bitterness, but instead it disappeared into black boxes and locked rooms. People higher up decided the risks outweighed the rewards. He paused, studying Sarah carefully. "Your mother." She didn't agree with their decision. She believed the knowledge we'd created should belong to everyone, not just a select few. Sarah listened intently, her mind racing. This version of Eleanor, the innovator, the rebel, was so different from the woman she had grown up with. Yet as Harold spoke, she realized how much sense it made. Her mother's quiet determination, her ability to solve problems creatively, her occasional moments of melancholy, they all pointed to a life lived under immense pressure, carrying responsibilities far greater than anyone had imagined. According to Harold, Eleanor had grown increasingly disillusioned with the secrecy surrounding their work. Fearing that valuable discoveries might be lost forever, she had taken matters into her own hands. She didn't tell me what she planned to do, Harold admitted. But I suspected she found a way to preserve the data. If anyone could figure out how to protect it, it was Eleanor. As Sarah absorbed this revelation, she felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. Pride because her mother had clearly been extraordinary, driven by a desire to make the world better despite the odds stacked against her. Sorrow because Eleanor had carried that burden alone, unable or unwilling to share it with those who loved her most. Back at home, Sarah relayed everything she had learned to Michael and Emily. The three siblings sat around the kitchen table, poring over the documents Sarah had brought back from Harold's apartment. Among them were sketches of machines, notes filled with technical jargon, and references to experiments conducted in secret labs. It was overwhelming, but also thrilling. For the first time, they felt like they were getting closer to understanding the truth about their mother. One document in particular stood out. A letter addressed to Eleanor from a colleague, dated shortly before she left the project. The tone was urgent, warning her to be careful and reminding her that they're watching. Whoever they were, it was clear Eleanor had faced significant danger in her efforts to safeguard the information. Perhaps that was why she had chosen to embed the capsule within her own body, to ensure it would remain hidden until the right moment. As the pieces of the puzzle came together, the family began to see Eleanor's actions in a new light. What had once seemed like secrecy now appeared to be an act of profound courage. She had risked everything, not just her safety but her peace of mind, to protect knowledge she believed could benefit humanity. And yet, she had done so quietly, without seeking recognition or reward. That was the essence of who Eleanor was: selfless, resilient, and fiercely determined. Still, questions remained. Who were they, and why had they deemed the project too dangerous to pursue? What exactly did the blueprints and designs represent, and how could they be used today? And most importantly, why had Eleanor never confided in her family about any of this? Had she feared putting them in harm's way? Or had she simply wanted to shield them from the complexities of her past? These uncertainties weighed heavily on Sarah, Michael, and Emily, but they also fueled their determination to honor Eleanor's legacy. They vowed to continue unraveling the mystery no matter how long it took. In doing so, they hoped to not only understand their mother better, but also fulfill the mission she had dedicated her life to, a mission born out of love, sacrifice, and an unshakable belief in the power of knowledge to transform the world. With each passing day, the siblings grew closer, united by their shared quest for answers. They spent hours discussing theories, debating possibilities, and imagining what Eleanor must have felt as she navigated the challenges of her double life. Though the journey ahead promised to be difficult, they drew strength from the knowledge that they were walking in their mother's footsteps, following a path she had paved with bravery and conviction. And so, the mystery of Eleanor Grayson unfolded, layer by layer, revealing a woman whose quiet exterior masked a spirit of boundless determination. As her family delved deeper into her hidden world, they came to realize that the greatest secrets are often carried not in words, but in actions, and that sometimes the truest form of love is the willingness to bear burdens silently, ensuring that others will someday reap the rewards. The discovery of the microfilm's contents marked a turning point for Sarah, Michael, and Emily. What had started as a quest to understand their mother's mysterious past quickly evolved into something far greater, a journey that would challenge everything they thought they knew about Eleanor Grayson and her place in the world. The blueprints, diagrams, and encoded messages etched onto the microfilm revealed technology so advanced that even the specialists analyzing them struggled to fully comprehend their implications. At first glance, the designs appeared to focus on two primary areas: energy generation and medical innovation. One set of schematics depicted a device capable of harnessing renewable energy from sources previously considered impractical or unreachable. Another outlined a machine designed to repair damaged tissues at a cellular level, potentially revolutionizing treatments for diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's. These were not mere concepts. They were detailed plans, complete with equations, material specifications, and step-by-step instructions for assembly. Whoever had created these designs, and Eleanor had clearly played a pivotal role, was decades ahead of their time. As the family learned more about the potential applications of the technology, they couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and unease. On one hand, the possibilities were staggering. If developed responsibly, these inventions could address some of humanity's most pressing challenges, from climate change to incurable illnesses. But on the other hand, the power contained within those blueprints was immense, and its misuse could have catastrophic consequences. It became increasingly clear why Eleanor had gone to such lengths to protect this knowledge, and why someone might want to keep it hidden forever. The specialists working on decoding the microfilm eventually uncovered fragments of text alongside the technical drawings. These notes provided context, though much of it was cryptic and required careful interpretation. One passage stood out in particular. Project Horizon will redefine the boundaries of human capability. However, its success depends not only on scientific advancement but also on moral integrity. We must ensure this work serves all, not just a privileged few. The words resonated deeply with the siblings, echoing the values Eleanor had instilled in them throughout their lives. But the revelations didn't stop there. Embedded within the microfilm were references to an organization known only as the Consortium. This shadowy group seemed to have funded the project Eleanor and Harold Langston had worked on, though their motives remained unclear. Some of the documents hinted at internal disagreements over how or whether the technology should be released to the public. Phrases like risk management, containment protocols, and classified dissemination suggested that the consortium prioritized control above all else, viewing the innovations as tools for maintaining power rather than improving lives. Sarah, Michael, and Emily began piecing together a narrative based on the information they had gathered. Decades earlier, Eleanor and her colleagues had been part of a groundbreaking initiative aimed at pushing the limits of science and engineering. Their work had shown incredible promise, but when the consortium deemed the risks too high, they shut down the project and erased all traces of its existence. Fearing that vital knowledge would be lost forever, Eleanor had taken drastic measures to preserve it, embedding the capsule within her own body as a last resort. This realization hit the family hard. They now understood why Eleanor had lived such a guarded life, keeping her past buried beneath layers of silence. She hadn't just been protecting herself. She'd been safeguarding humanity's future. Every moment of introspection, every late-night phone call, every unexplained trip abroad suddenly made sense. Eleanor had carried the weight of this responsibility alone, trusting no one, not even her own children, with the truth. Despite the gravity of what they had uncovered, the siblings found themselves grappling with conflicting emotions. Pride swelled in their hearts as they imagined Eleanor standing up to powerful forces, refusing to let her work disappear into obscurity. Yet sadness lingered too, knowing how isolated she must have felt, carrying such a monumental burden without anyone to share it with. For years they had assumed her quiet demeanor stemmed from contentment, but now they saw it for what it truly was: a shield, concealing the storms raging beneath the surface. Determined to honor Eleanor's sacrifice, the family faced a daunting decision. What should they do with the information? Destroying the microfilm would erase any chance of the technology falling into the wrong hands, but it would also mean abandoning the hope of using it for good. Sharing it publicly, however, came with its own risks. Powerful organizations might seize the opportunity to exploit the discoveries for profit or domination, disregarding the ethical considerations Eleanor had fought so hard to uphold. To make matters more complicated, strange things began happening around the house. Late at night, Sarah swore she heard faint noises outside her window, though no one was there when she checked. Michael noticed unfamiliar cars parked near their neighborhood, lingering longer than usual before driving away. Even Emily, who rarely paid attention to such details, commented on how often her phone seemed to glitch or lose signal unexpectedly. Paranoia crept in, leaving the siblings wondering if they were being watched. Their fears weren't unfounded. When Sarah revisited Dr. Langston to ask follow-up questions, he grew visibly uneasy. "You need to be careful," he warned, his voice barely above a whisper. "If the consortium finds out you've uncovered this, well, let's just say, they don't take kindly to loose ends." His words sent chills down Sarah's spine, but she refused to back down. Whatever dangers lay ahead, she knew they couldn't abandon the mission Eleanor had dedicated her life to. The family decided to consult experts outside their immediate circle, seeking advice from trusted scientists, ethicists, and legal professionals. Together, they devised a plan to release the information gradually and strategically, ensuring it reached reputable institutions committed to responsible development. By donating the blueprints and data anonymously, they hoped to minimize the risk of exposure while still honoring Eleanor's vision. Preparing the materials for release proved to be a painstaking process. Each document had to be carefully reviewed, redacted where necessary, and accompanied by explanations to prevent misinterpretation. The siblings worked tirelessly, fueled by a shared sense of purpose. Though the task was overwhelming, they drew strength from each other and from the memory of their mother, whose courage inspired them to keep moving forward. As the final pieces fell into place, Sarah, Michael, and Emily gathered in the living room, surrounded by stacks of papers and digital files. For a long moment, they sat in silence, reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. They thought about Eleanor, the woman who had loved them fiercely, protected them silently, and entrusted them with a legacy far greater than they had ever imagined. "This is what she wanted," Sarah said finally, breaking the quiet. "She believed in us, even if she couldn't tell us why. Now it's our turn to carry the torch." Michael nodded, his expression resolute. "We'll do it right. For her," Emily added softly, "and for everyone else who deserves a better future." With that, they finalized the arrangements, sending the decoded microfilm to select research facilities around the world. Within weeks, news of the groundbreaking discoveries began to circulate, sparking excitement and debate among scientists and policymakers alike. While questions remained about the origins of the technology, its potential impact was undeniable. Lives would be saved, resources preserved, and barriers broken, all thanks to the quiet determination of a woman who had once been overlooked. For Sarah, Michael, and Emily, the experience transformed their understanding of legacy. Eleanor hadn't left behind wealth or fame. Instead, she had given them something infinitely more valuable, a chance to shape the world in ways that reflected her values. Through her actions, she had taught them that true greatness lies not in recognition, but in service, not in power, but in compassion. Though the road ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, the siblings felt a renewed sense of hope. They had uncovered the truth about their mother, not as a relic of the past, but as a beacon guiding them toward a brighter future. And as they looked out at the horizon, they knew Eleanor's spirit would always walk beside them, reminding them that even the smallest acts of courage can leave ripples that span generations. The decision to release the microfilm's contents marked a turning point for Sarah, Michael, and Emily. It was a bold move, one that came with risks they couldn't fully anticipate. While they had taken precautions, donating the data anonymously, and carefully selecting institutions known for their ethical standards, the siblings couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping onto uncertain ground. The weight of their mother's legacy rested heavily on their shoulders, and every step forward felt like walking a tightrope between honoring her wishes and protecting themselves from unseen dangers. In the weeks following the release, the world began to take notice. Scientists and researchers who received the blueprints were astounded by the sophistication of the designs. The renewable energy device, once thought impossible, sparked debates about how it could transform global infrastructure. Meanwhile, the medical technology promised breakthroughs in treating degenerative diseases, offering hope to millions who had long given up on finding cures. News outlets picked up the story, dubbing the mysterious donor the silent innovator, though no one suspected the truth behind the name. For Sarah, Michael, and Emily, watching the ripple effects of their actions brought a mix of pride and anxiety. On one hand, they were thrilled to see Eleanor's work gaining recognition. Her quiet sacrifices, once hidden away, were now bearing fruit in ways she could never have imagined during her lifetime. Yet, the attention also made them uneasy. Every news article, every interview with scientists praising the discoveries, felt like another spotlight shining directly on them. The fear of being discovered gnawed at their minds, especially after the strange occurrences around their home had intensified. Late-night phone calls with garbled voices asking cryptic questions became a regular occurrence. Once, Emily answered, the landline only to hear static followed by a low, distorted voice saying, "You shouldn't have opened it." She hung up immediately, her hands trembling, and relayed the incident to her siblings. They decided to change their phone numbers and install security cameras around the house, but the sense of vulnerability lingered. Even mundane tasks like grocery shopping or taking walks in the neighborhood felt fraught with tension, as if someone might be watching their every move. Dr. Harold Langston, too, seemed increasingly anxious. When Sarah reached out to update him on the progress, he sounded weary and cautious. "I warned you this would happen," he said over the phone. "They're not going to let this go quietly. You've stirred something that was meant to stay buried." His words sent chills down Sarah's spine, but she refused to back down. "We can't undo what we've done," she replied firmly. "And honestly, I don't think Mom would have wanted us to." Despite the mounting pressure, the family continued to navigate the challenges together. Their bond grew stronger as they leaned on each other for support, sharing both their fears and their hopes. One evening, gathered around the dining table, with cups of tea steaming in front of them, they discussed what they had learned about their mother and themselves throughout this journey. "She wasn't just protecting the technology," Michael said thoughtfully. "She was protecting us. That's why she kept it all inside her, literally and figuratively. She didn't want anyone coming after us because of what she knew." His siblings nodded in agreement. It was a sobering realization, one that deepened their admiration for Eleanor's strength and selflessness. Emily chimed in, her voice soft but resolute. "But now we're part of it. We can't run away from this. If anything happens to us, at least we'll know we tried to do the right thing." Her words carried a quiet determination that resonated with Sarah and Michael. They had always seen themselves as ordinary people living ordinary lives, but Eleanor's secret had pulled them into a story far bigger than themselves, a story of courage, sacrifice, and the enduring power of love. As the days passed, the siblings began receiving letters from people whose lives had already been touched by the emerging technologies. A mother wrote to thank them for giving her hope that her child, born with a rare genetic disorder, might one day lead a normal life. A farmer expressed gratitude for the possibility of affordable, sustainable energy solutions that could save his struggling business. Each message reinforced their belief that they had made the right choice, even if it came at a personal cost. Still, the shadow of the consortium loomed large. Though the organization had remained silent so far, its presence was undeniable. Reports surfaced of high-level meetings between government officials and corporate leaders, ostensibly to discuss the implications of the leaked technologies. Some speculated that the consortium was orchestrating efforts to suppress the information, while others believed they were trying to co-opt it for their own gain. Whatever the case, the siblings knew they had awakened a sleeping giant. To protect themselves, they took additional steps to cover their tracks. With the help of a trusted lawyer, they set up a legal entity under a pseudonym to manage any correspondence related to the project. They also consulted cybersecurity experts to secure their digital communications, ensuring that no one could trace the data back to them. These measures provided some peace of mind, but the constant vigilance was exhausting. One afternoon, as Sarah sifted through more of Eleanor's belongings, she stumbled upon a small journal tucked away in a drawer she hadn't opened before. Its pages were filled with handwritten notes, sketches, and reflections that offered a glimpse into Eleanor's inner world. One entry stood out. "Sometimes I wonder if I've done enough. If hiding this knowledge makes me complicit in its loss. But then I remember why I started. To give future generations a chance to decide for themselves. That has to count for something." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she read the words aloud to her siblings. For the first time, they truly understood the depth of Eleanor's internal conflict. She hadn't acted out of blind obedience or fear. She had wrestled with doubt and guilt, questioning whether her choices were the right ones. And yet, she had persevered, driven by an unshakable belief in the potential for good. Inspired by Eleanor's resilience, the family resolved to face whatever challenges lay ahead with the same unwavering spirit. They began documenting their experiences, creating a record of everything they had uncovered about their mother's past and the decisions they had made since her death. This account, written in plain language and devoid of identifying details, would serve as both a testament to Eleanor's legacy and a guide for others who might find themselves entrusted with similar responsibilities. "We can't control what happens next," Sarah said during one of their late-night discussions, "but we can make sure people understand why we did what we did. Maybe that will inspire them to carry the torch when we're gone." Michael nodded, adding, "Mom gave us a gift, not just the technology but the courage to use it wisely. That's something worth fighting for." Emily smiled faintly, her gaze drifting toward the window where Eleanor used to sit and stare at the ocean. She always said the sea reminded her of endless possibilities. I think she saw herself in those waves, quiet on the surface, but full of strength beneath. With renewed resolve, the siblings embraced their role as guardians of Eleanor's vision. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but they also knew they weren't alone. In every scientist working tirelessly to develop the technologies, in every patient clinging to hope for a better tomorrow, in every child dreaming of a brighter future, they saw echoes of their mother's quiet determination. And so, they pressed on, guided by the lessons Eleanor had taught them through her life and her secrets. Love, they realized, wasn't just about protecting those you cared about. It was about empowering them to stand tall, even in the face of uncertainty. As they looked toward the horizon, they felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the woman who had shaped their lives, but for the opportunity to continue her work in ways she could never have foreseen. Though shadows still lingered, casting doubts and fears across their path, the light of Eleanor's legacy burned brightly, illuminating the way forward. For Sarah, Michael, and Emily, it was enough to keep moving, one step at a time, knowing that their mother's quiet courage would always walk beside them. Months turned into years, and the world slowly began to change in ways that reflected Eleanor Grayson's quiet yet profound influence. The technologies derived from the blueprints she had safeguarded within her body started to take shape, transforming industries and saving lives. Solar farms powered by the renewable energy device sprang up across continents, providing clean electricity to communities that had once relied on fossil fuels. Hospitals adopted early prototypes of the cellular repair machine, offering treatments for conditions previously deemed incurable. News stories celebrated these advancements, hailing them as milestones in human progress, though few knew the true origin of the innovations, or the sacrifices made to bring them into existence. 40. Sarah, Michael, and Emily, life settled into a rhythm of cautious optimism. While they remained vigilant, aware that their actions might still attract unwanted attention, the immediate threats seemed to fade over time. The consortium, whoever they were, appeared to have retreated into the shadows, perhaps realizing that trying to suppress the discoveries would only draw more scrutiny. Instead, they focused on controlling the narrative, positioning themselves as benefactors of the very technologies they had once sought to bury. It was a bitter irony, but one the siblings chose to accept rather than fight. Their priority was ensuring that Eleanor's vision continued to guide the development of the inventions, even if they couldn't claim credit for it. The family found solace in small victories. Watching documentaries about the impact of the renewable energy device, hearing testimonials from patients whose lives had been saved by the medical technology, these moments reminded them why they had taken the risks they did. They often gathered in Eleanor's old living room, now converted into a cozy space filled with books, photographs, and mementos that told her story. On quiet evenings, they would sit together, sharing memories of their mother and marveling at how much they had come to understand about her since her passing. One day, while sorting through a box of Eleanor's belongings, Emily discovered something unexpected, a sealed envelope addressed to my beloved family. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing a letter written in her mother's familiar handwriting. The words inside brought tears to her eyes, and later, to those of her siblings, as they read aloud. To my dearest Sarah, Michael, and Emily, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you, and you have uncovered the secret I carried for so many years. Please know that I never meant to keep this from you out of mistrust or fear. I did it because I wanted to protect you from the burdens I bore and the dangers that came with them. But I also hoped that someday you would find this knowledge and use it wisely. The work I was part of wasn't just about creating machines or solving problems. It was about believing in the goodness of humanity, even when the world felt dark and uncertain. I believed then, and I believe now, that people are capable of incredible things when given the chance. That is why I fought to preserve what we created, even when others tried to silence us. I want you to know how proud I am of each of you, not just for who you are today, but for the strength and compassion you will show in the future. Whatever choices you make regarding this legacy, trust your hearts and remember that love is the greatest force we have. Carry it with you always, and let it guide you. With all my love, Eleanor. The letter left the siblings speechless. For so long, they had pieced together fragments of their mother's past, trying to understand her motivations and the weight of her decisions. Now, here was Eleanor speaking directly to them, offering clarity and reassurance. It was as if she had known all along that they would rise to the occasion, honoring her wishes while forging their own paths. Inspired by the letter, the family decided to create a foundation in Eleanor's name. Its mission was simple: to support initiatives aligned with the values she had embodied: innovation, ethics, and service to others. Using funds donated anonymously by grateful beneficiaries of the technologies, they established scholarships for young scientists, grants for sustainable projects, and programs aimed at increasing access to advanced medical care in underserved areas. Through the foundation, Eleanor's legacy lived on, touching countless lives without ever needing to reveal its origins. As the years passed, Sarah, Michael, and Emily grew older, their roles shifting from active participants in the unfolding story to stewards of its continuation. They watched their children and grandchildren grow up in a world shaped in part by their grandmother's courage. Stories of Eleanor became family legends, passed down like treasured heirlooms. Her garden flourished under Emily's care, blooming, with flowers that seemed to mirror her spirit, resilient, vibrant, and full of quiet beauty. But the siblings never forgot the lessons they had learned. Life, they realized, was not defined by grand gestures or public accolades. It was shaped by the choices we make, the love we share, and the legacies we leave behind. Eleanor's life had been a testament to that truth, a reminder that even the most ordinary-seeming individuals can carry extraordinary stories within them. One crisp autumn morning, years after Eleanor's death, Sarah stood by the ocean, gazing at the waves that had once captivated her mother. Beside her, Michael and Emily joined in silent reflection. The three of them had weathered storms together, both literal and figurative, emerging stronger and more united than ever. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the water, Sarah spoke softly, breaking the stillness. She'd be proud of us, wouldn't she? Michael smiled, his voice steady. She already is. Emily nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. And wherever she is, I hope she knows we're carrying her torch. In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the coast and the warmth of shared memories, They felt a deep sense of peace. Eleanor's journey had been one of quiet determination, marked by sacrifices and secrets that spanned decades. Yet her legacy endured, woven into the fabric of their lives and the world beyond. She had taught them that true greatness lies not in recognition but in service, not in power but in compassion. And so the story of Eleanor Grayson came full circle, not with fanfare or applause but with the gentle assurance that her love and courage would continue to ripple through generations, shaping the future in ways she could never have imagined. For Sarah, Michael, and Emily, that was enough. It was more than enough.